Hello, I'm Brian Hood from the sixfigurehomestudio.com, and in this video, we're going to break down a Reddit post I found about a recording studio owner that started his studio, tried to run his studio, and ultimately shut it down. He failed. So I think there's a lot we can take away from this. So the title of this post is Things to Avoid When Starting a Studio from a Guy Who Closed His. And I'm just going to read it from top to bottom, and then we can kind of talk about each section by section. I opened a home recording studio a year ago. I dare say I'm a pretty good engineer. I went to school for it for 2 years, and I've been working on it as a side thing for about 10 years. I decided to go for it. I launched the business. I spent a few grand on the gear I didn't already have. I quit my day job when I had 2 clients and said, fuck it. I'll start a business on a credit card. What went well? Clients loved my work and recommended me, and I was busy the whole time. What went for shit? Pretty much everything else. 1. I gave too many people promotional rates to get my name out there. People took advantage of it, and I spent an insane amount of time working for terrible money. Probably worked out to about $10 an hour for a couple months. 2. I did it somewhere with a bitchy next door neighbor. This wasn't really my fault. She moved in when I had been doing it for months, and it was a whole ordeal I won't get into. But basically, make sure you're located somewhere the noise won't be an issue. 3. I suck at accounting and was afraid to ask for help. The financial side was a disaster. 4. I was way too perfectionist. I spent hours editing drum takes, pitch fixing vocals, writing complex parts for projects that really didn't justify the time. I'm sure there are more problems that I'm forgetting too. And then he goes on to say, happy ending, he has 0 regrets, which I agree. But back to me, there's a lot we can learn from this. I really think that this guy has some good insights here, but I think that there are some issues that really from the get-go, he was not setting himself up for the best chance that he could have possibly had. So let's go through from the top. I'm going to kind of break down what I think he could have done better and what I think were huge red flags from the get-go that his studio was going to struggle from day one. So he decided to go for it. He launched the business, spent a few grand on gear he didn't already have. First sentence in, we already have some good stuff to talk about. Decided to go for it. That first line in and of itself is something that you really need to look at. I already made another video about this, making the decision whether you should jump for the full-time thing or not. I really encourage you to watch that if you haven't already. But there's a lot you need to take account of this. Do you have the skills necessary? Do you have the mindset necessary? Do you have the financial cushion necessary to do that? Judging by this guy, he started his business on a credit card, which I'll get to that in a second, but that just shows you right there that he was not in a financial position to make the change yet. So he spent a few grand on the gear that he didn't already have. He quit his day job when he had 2 clients and said, fuck it, I'll start the business on a credit card. So we're going to get to the quit his day job when he had 2 clients. That is also goes back to the other video I made that I posted before this. If you have 2 clients, it's probably not a good time to leave your day job. You really need to have a good amount of clientele in place. Now, to counter that, if your day job is really distracting you from pursuing this full time and building up a bigger clientele, maybe it's time to move to a part-time position or cut back on your hours. I've talked to several people who were working 40, 50, 60 hours a week at their main job and have no time to build up any sort of clientele in their recording studio space. So if it comes down to it, don't just quit your day job and then go all in the studio. Get a part-time job and have some money coming in on the side and also get some savings up. This guy started it on a credit card. You know what that means? That means from day one, he has a massive amount of debt. Now, maybe not a massive to some people, but if you're spending $3,000 on a credit card with 15 to 20% APR, basically your interest rate is 20%. That is a lot of money that you're spending every single month just on interest. So if you're paying minimum payments, your runway is already getting cut down from what it would be. This guy already had no runway, which the runway, for those of you who don't know what it is, runway is just how much money you have in the bank. So if you have no income and you have 12 months of runway, that means you have 12 months worth of living expenses saved up. This guy had 0 months of runway. And not only that, he was in the negative because he had a credit card bill to pay every month, not taking into account whatever his other bills were at the time. If you're going to go into debt like this to start your studio, you may even, I hate to say it, but you're probably going to have other debt that is like consumer type debt, like a car payment or some other type of loans that you have out that you shouldn't. And then he has maybe even student loan debt. He said he had 2 years that he went to school for this. So if he has all these things working against him, he's really not putting himself in a good position to succeed from the very get-go. But let's keep going. Hopefully this first part has been helpful for you. So what went well? He said, clients love my work and recommended me, and I was busy the whole time. The key here is, and he talks about it some more, is you don't want to just be busy. It's good to do a lot of client work. You want your people talking about you as much as possible, but don't just stay busy for the sake of being busy. Otherwise, people will take advantage of you. And it goes on to say right here, well, it went to shit. Pretty much everything else. Number one, I gave too many people promotional rates to get my name out there. Now, I have no problem with people giving promotional rates to get started. I think it's a lot better than doing free work sometimes. I'll have to make another video about free work at some other time because that's kind of it's a subject I haven't made a big decision on whether I think it's good or not. But as far as people taking advantage of you, promotional rates are better than just doing free work. Okay, I get it. But people took advantage of it, and I spent an insane amount of time working for terrible money, and it probably worked out to $10 an hour. I get this. My first project I ever did, it came out to maybe $4 to $5 an hour. Now, I wasn't picky about it because I was still learning a lot at the time, and I wasn't very good at it yet. So getting paid $4 or $5 an hour to learn and get better at your craft and to start building up your client list, that's not a bad gig to have. That being said, if you're playing in the free ballpark, which I'll have to make another video about this separately, but if you're playing in the promotional rate game and you're just giving people discounts all the time, that's going to be a very bad treadmill that you do not want to get on. So, number two, I did it somewhere with a bitchy next door neighbor. This wasn't really my fault. She moved in when I've been doing it for months, and it was a whole ordeal. Basically, this is a big issue with having a home studio, especially if you're doing drums. There's not a whole lot you can do, especially if you're trying to start it up in a house that you already own or you're already living in, and it's already in a neighborhood that's crowded. There are a few workarounds. They're not all perfect. There's pros and cons of each. One is you can rent out another studio to do drums and other loud things like guitar reamping. You can rent out someone else's studio. The problem with that is it adds an additional expense to your bottom line every month, but that gets rid of the neighbor problem. The other thing you can try to do is if you're doing loud drums, you could do program drums instead. There's a lot you can do with program drums to make them sound natural. And when it comes down to just doing nothing at all or program drums, I'm going to do program drums 10 times out of 10. I promise you that. The other thing is guitars. Guitars can be very, very loud, guitar amps. So with that, you can also just record with DI only. I do that all the time at my studio. Record DI only and then do all the reamps after the fact. If you're reamping after the fact, you can not only can you pick your tones when you have the full thing in place and you kind of know what the album is going to sound like, you can then pick the time that you're going to make all this noise. So if your neighbor's out grocery shopping or out working or whatever, you know she's gone or he's gone, whoever that is that's complaining about noise, you can then do all your reamping at that time and you can get it usually a full-length album. You can get done in an hour or two to do reamping because it's just playing through the tracks, however many tracks you have, and then it's in one pass and you're done. It's really fast, really easy. It's loud, but at the same time, you can pick and choose when you're loud. And then the third option with that again would be, or whatever number I'm on, would be you could just get the studio thing again. Rent another studio out, do all the loud stuff in there, and then it's an additional expense, but it's still better than doing nothing at all. So to keep going, I suck at accounting and I was afraid to ask for help. The financial side was a disaster. This is why I have this blog. The Six Figure Home Studio is all about people like this who understand the creative side of things. You want to do as much as you can for your business, but you don't know where to go. You don't know who to ask for help, and you're kind of afraid to ask because you don't want to look stupid. It's okay to look stupid. It's okay to ask dumb questions. I know that I would rather ask a stupid question or a seemingly dumb question to someone that I respect because A, if it's someone that I respect, they're not going to just talk down to me and act like I'm stupid. B, gaining the knowledge on the parts that I lack, like this guy on the financial side of things, if his issue is the financial side of things and he's not asking for help, it really ended up biting him in the butt at the end of the day. He didn't have all his finances in place. He didn't know his numbers. And because of his unwillingness to ask questions and find sources, he let this get to him, which really sucks. I hate to see people's businesses fall apart, but when it comes down to just asking questions to people and being curious and really educating yourself, don't let this stuff just go to the wayside and become a liability to you. Don't let it be a weakness is all I'm trying to say. So number 4, I was way too perfectionist. I spent hours editing drum takes, pitch fixing vocals, writing complex parts for projects that really didn't justify the time. Dude, that's just recording. There is no corner cutting in this. Whether you're charging $5 a song or $5,000 a song, it's going to be the same amount of work. You cannot put a justification on the amount of time and effort you put into something to the price tag. Those are two completely different things. And this is why I tell people, price your projects off of value, not time spent. Um, with this, having the mindset that the amount of money you get from this person is going to directly affect the amount of effort you put into it, that is a terrible way to approach it. You need to approach it on, this is my one chance to kill it, to make these bands happy. And if I'm struggling to get artists in the door, I'm not trying to figure out how to pump out as many artists as possible, because you don't have artists coming in and out of your studio like that. They're not coming in constantly. So you have to figure out the few that you have to make the most of it. So if you are not, if you're not spending time on the 3 artists you get per year or month, or however often you're getting artists in there, if you're not spending as much time as possible and putting your all into each one of those projects, you are doomed to fail from the start. It is just the way it is. And that's it. I just wanted to make a video that was a little bit more of a stream of thought. And I thought this was a very, very interesting post. But now I want to kind of go into the comments, because the comments are the interesting part to me. Reddit, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's just basically people post things and then people can post comments. It's like social media, but it's typically anonymous. And if you are the user Humbucker, I'm sorry for tearing apart your studio, but you're probably not looking up stuff like this anyways if you've given up. Now, looking at the Reddit comments, this is the part that kind of disturbs me, but I understand it. I've seen this comment from people so many times. It's actually twice in this. Know how to make $1 million doing production work? Start with $2 million. And if you scroll all the way down here to the bottom to Red Arrow 18, he says, some advice I heard from opening a studio. If you want $1 million studio, start with $2 million. When I released my book, Keys to a Six-Figure Home Studio, it was an ebook, it's free, whatever. I posted it on Facebook. It got 300 comments or something, an insane amount of comments. And I probably saw that same comment 10 or 15 times. It is overplayed. And it's not good to have that mindset where if you want to start with $1 million, or if you want to get $1 million, start with $2 million. Like, that's just kind of a negative scarcity type mindset that I hate to see from people. Mlokz, M-L-O-K-Z, Mlokz, I don't know. He says, hey man, glad you tried and went for it. I had opened a studio a couple years ago and hated it. My problem was I took in every client and didn't turn any away. I closed it because I hated running a studio, but I'm still freelancing as a mixing engineer full time. Mixing, I love recording and running studio. I'm sorry, mixing I love, but recording and running a studio was a headache. Comments, man. All right. This is a comment that I actually really wanted to talk about as well, because in this, a lot of you guys can relate. If you don't have a lot of work coming in, and this guy said he didn't turn any client away, you're not going to like doing a studio. The problem you get here is you're saying yes to everything. You're going to get some really, really shit clients coming in the door. They're going to be not fun to work with. They're not going to be talented. They're not going to be prepared. And you have to learn to say no to projects. It is going to help you in the long run. These are the artists that are not going to help your portfolio out. All they're doing is paying your bills and making you unhappy. This comes back to kind of the side gig, having a part-time job on the side that can supplement your income. I would much rather you go work at McDonald's making $6 an hour or whatever they're paying now than to take on every single artist that comes in the door just for the sake of doing it. On the flip side, if you're still learning and growing and you're trying to just figure things out, it's okay to say yes to those types of things. But once you start hating it, once you start loathing your job, it's probably time to start saying no to some projects. We go down to Terakith. I don't know how to say. These are some weird names. He said, props for trying and sharing your expertise from others to learn from. Running your own business is definitely not as easy as a lot of people think, especially with anything related to music. A lot of people try to put too much emphasis on their engineering, producing, writing skills as the basis for the business. It took me personally a long time to figure out that those that are successful tend to be focusing more on the entrepreneur and financial side of things more than the gear and music stuff. Go to school for that if you want to run a successful business, not for audio engineering. So what he's saying here is, and this is something that I kind of agree with, don't just focus on all the technical stuff. Don't be if you go read the book called The E-Myth Revisited, they talk about the technician, the entrepreneur, and the, technician, entrepreneur, and what the fuck is it? I'm gonna have to look this up. God, I hate this so much. So I have no idea where I left off in that last little section. My editor's going to have to do a hard cut here. I had to go look up something that I forgot. But if you ever read the book, The E-Myth Revisited, Michael Gerber talks about the three types of people in business. There is the technician, there's the entrepreneur, and there is the manager. Most people in the audio engineering space are what we would call the technicians. These are the guys that want to just put their heads down. They don't want to talk to anyone. They don't want to see anyone. They just want to fiddle with things. They want to research all the latest gear. They want to talk about, the different compressors, the different colors of the microphones provide, and compressors and preamps, whatever. All that stuff is fantastic, and I really do encourage you guys to learn as much as you can about that stuff because it's part of the business. But you can't just focus only on that. The best people focus on entrepreneurism as well, being the entrepreneur and being the manager. That's all the systems and stuff in place. There is a lot that goes into all three sections of these, and what Mr. Tarakith is saying here is the people who succeed the most in the business, in the audio entrepreneur world, or whatever you want to call us, are the people that really take the entrepreneurship seriously. These are the ones that read the books on business, read the books on marketing, read the books that don't seem like they're tied to the recording studio world, but in reality, they're very tied to the recording studio world if you're trying to make a living doing this. Business is universal. I can go read a book about photography if it's business related, and I can apply 90% of it, 95% of it directly to my studio business. There are a lot of fundamentals that go into having a successful business, and it's more than just learning to turn knobs and make people happy in the studio. There's a lot more that come into it that some of you guys just don't think about. And I'm hoping that this kind of videos like this are going to help you think about those types of things. So that's it. That's all I have for this video. Happy hustling. And remember, it sucks to suck. So always keep learning. Goodbye.